today is the first episode of the mic back on of my series where I am Hey Brian, where we are doing a whole series where we are going to be talking with ladies in the gaming industry. So we're going to be talking with designers, publishers, artists, reviewers, whoever. I don't know. It's going to be great. My first, obviously. So my first awesome guest is going to be Kathleen Hinrichs Mercury, and she is awesome.
Hey.
And you are awesome. I instantly was like, I'm going to make this person my friend, whether she likes it or not. So hopefully you're chill with that.
I like it. It's cool.
Perfect. I like it. So we don't know what we're going to call this series yet. Kathleen and I were kind of chatting about it before we started. So if you have an idea of what we should name this series, please put it in the comments. So, Kathleen.
Yes.
How long have you been in the gaming industry?
Well, I started teaching game design to my students about 12-something years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's kind of what sort of helped propel this because, well, one, if they're going to design games, I'm going to do it too because I hate the expression, those who can't do teach.
Right.
And
as a dance teacher, I extra hated that. So I get it.
And so there's that. And then I couldn't really find a lot of resources about teaching game design back then. And so I just had to kind of find resources about game design and figure out how I could turn them into lessons for my students. And so then what I started doing was, after a while, I had this whole big Google Drive basically full of all these different files. And it's just sitting here. And then I thought, I've been, maybe I should publish, but a book is stagnant and just sort of sits on the shelf. And then I just thought, with technology, I can just share everything and it can be live. And so if I change things, then it might change it for other people, which happens. But also, then other people can use it too. And just in talking about it and, lots of people use it all over the world, which is very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I've had people contact me about translating it into Chinese, into Polish.
Shut up. That's cool.
There's a lot of people in Australia teach game design with it. So yeah, and that's amazing because most of the time, most teachers can collaborate in their building or maybe in their district, but this is just, there's no reason to have any type of limitations or barriers as far as that goes. So yeah, that's awesome. And so in doing that and talking about what I was doing, then I started getting invited to be on podcasts. And so I would meet and talk with people. And then I got invited to co-host podcasts. So I'm a co-host for Games in Schools and Libraries. And then, still working on my own games and everything. And I love the gaming industry. I have so many friends in the gaming world. And I just think game design is fascinating. The people who do it are so interesting. And so then I ended up, taking one of my games and showing it for a long time. And then about 5 years, maybe longer, after I first started shopping it around, it got signed. And just because it's a big thing. And back then, lots of components were too expensive, but manufacturing is a lot different now. So that's cool. And so I got that game signed. That's Ragnarok with Colossal Games.
Yes.
And yeah, we're going to start really pushing towards getting that ready. So that's super exciting. And then, I sold another game, ended up getting the rights to it back, but then I got an email today from a different publisher today about, we're thinking 2021 release. And I'm like,
it's pretty solid.
Yay. And then, right. And then I have this other game that I've been showing the last few months, and that one's generated a lot of positive responses too. And so I've got a number of publishers looking at that too. And so it's there's not necessarily a start date. It's more I think this is really interesting and I think this is really fascinating, not just because, I like all of it. I like playing games. I like designing games. I like all that. But game design and the game industry is such a small industry that it doesn't take too much to kind of meet people behind the curtain because you're oh, you designed that. When I met, Isaac Vega for the first time. And I was talking with somebody he was with and I was like, I'm Kathleen. How are you? And this was Danny Kwak. And he said, hey, Kathleen, Dead of Winter? And I was like, yeah. He's like, he co-designed it. I was like, oh, awkward. I'm like, well, good job.
I've had that moment too. Mine was actually, this is really funny. Mine was with Bebo.
Mm-hmm.
So we were at Origins, and we're at like a game designer thing, and she sits down next to me, and she's chit-chatting with me, and Brian, my husband, looks at me and goes, "Do you know who that is?" And I was like, "Yeah, her name's Brittany." And he goes, "That's Bebo." And I was like, "Oh." Whoops.
Right, and that's the thing. And now, like, Isaac and I are cool, and like I play tested his game with him last time at BGP, and and it's so nice because, especially being a woman in the industry, people are incredibly supportive. As far as let's play test it. I'd love to give you feedback. If you want, just everything. I mean, I've had like friends of mine help promote my games, to like other publishers. Like, no, you really should take a look at this, and that's so meaningful. So I've been super, super lucky. And there's, but like luck favors the prepared. Like I work really hard. And, so I think, but it's also, persistence, whatever. So there's not really like a start date. It's just like a gradual parasitic relationship for me.
Yeah. This is the perfect description of working on your own game. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Accurate. So question for you then, since you teach gaming design to students, are they high schoolers?
Middle school.
Middle
7th
schoolers.
grade.
Awesome. So that's really cool. So you're teaching game design to middle schoolers. Do they play your games?
Well, it's funny actually, because like I said, I got an email from a publisher today about my game, and I'm still like, based on feedback from them before, working on some tweaks. And like, I had a moment where like my students in the room and I've got like tears welling up in my eyes, like, oh my gosh. But also, I'm like, I've got these things that I'm still working on, and they want to have a copy of this soon. So in one of my classes, it's a really small, it's only 3 kids. And so I said, hey, cause it's a class called Problem Solving Seminar. It's not one of my gifted classes, but it's for high ability kids, whatever. Anyway. And so I said, hey, this is like their second day with me. And I said, this is called Problem Solving Seminar. Will you help me solve one of my problems? And they're like, sure.
That's awesome.
And so, and I put the game on the table. So like we play tested it today. The other kids all want to see them and play test them. And I think that's the nice thing about it is, it's so hard. It's nearly impossible to design a game in the amount of time that they have. If I help frame them to think of it as a rough draft, then they can be a little bit better about it, but it's kind of hard for them at the end to not have it be like finished and perfect. Cause especially for my gifted kids, that's what they're used to. So, but it's funny though, for these kids, and I put it on the table and, so we played it and they gave like really good, insightful feedback, pointed out some things that I kind of already knew, but the fact that they were pointing this out, some other ideas, as far as the game goes.
You a solid instructor if they can point out things that you like already know about.
Oh, absolutely. Well, right. But also, that's not even instruct. This is my second day with them. This is just, them just being good. Or just,
That's true.
Well, or just, it's hard for kids sometimes to articulate what they like and don't like in a game when they don't have much experience. So the fact that they were like kind of saying, hey, this is a problem means it actually probably is a problem. So that's good.
Yeah.
So no, I did. And then the rest of the kids, I definitely have them play test my games and stuff because, part of the reason why I do it is, to show them that this is something that can be done, that is hard work, that is frustrating, that is a lot of fun, that's a whole variety of different things. And to really model authentically, that this isn't just something that I want you to do because school project. This is something I want you to do because, it's a real thing and it's fun and it's hard and it's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I know that you said it, but how long have you been teaching game design? You said 12 years?
Something like that. I think 12, 13. I don't even know.
Were you an educator prior to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I taught 2 years at a private school where I taught social studies, English, and everything else because it was a small private school. And then when I switched over to my current job, I think this is my 15th year. I remember my first year like it was yesterday. So,
right?
Time flies. Right. Yeah. And so it was like, I think about my second year or so when I really started, like, I did like a 3-week game unit and then it's like, just kind of turned into this, whole thing that's like foundational for me. So yeah, but no, I teach gifted kids. So in a gifted classroom, I'm looking for things that are multidisciplinary, that offer a high level of challenge, very process oriented, no right answer, that require a lot of work. And game design just perfectly fits in because they love games and they need complex problems to solve. And with game design, you establish what you want the problem to be, and then you have to figure out how to solve that. And it can mean some dark nights of the soul for them as 7th graders when they have trouble with it, when they're not used to necessarily having trouble at school things. Yeah. So it's a lot of human coaching, not just teaching game design. But yeah, I do this all within the context of my gifted class.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really cool.
Yes.
I'm a little jealous because that's probably the coolest job ever. Like, I get to teach cool gifted 7th graders how to design games.
Well, and then I did 8th grade last semester, so that was RPGs, filmmaking, cosplay. So
yeah, you're way cooler than I will ever be.
You know, I've been very, very fortunate to create this life for myself, and I cannot complain. All my problems I create myself, for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. Do you teach anything other than gaming stuff then during the school day?
Well, I mean, I definitely have a very like play-based, sort of orientation to what I do. If I can, like what's the most fun way that I can teach this is kind of what drives me. Like with games, like how can this be more fun? Like fun for me is just, drives me. When I went back to school to be a teacher, I started off as high school history, and then it was one of my instructors who's like, you should teach gifted. And I was like, wait a minute. I was in gifted programs. Those were my favorite classes. If I teach gifted, I can have fun all day. I'm like, what? This is great.
That sounds pretty solid.
So it's basically like it's extended middle school for me too, basically, which I'm okay with. And I want to make it very, very clear that I do not think that you have to be in a gifted program, or only kids in gifted programs can do game design, can teach game design. It's just that the nature of ways gifted classes are set up is I have an audience who's prime for it. And in addition, I have the ability to create courses any way I see fit for them. And so if if there's plenty of people who I've talked to who, because of the podcast Games in Schools and Libraries that I co-host, everything from English classrooms, math classrooms, like STEM classrooms, art classrooms. There's lots of ways people have, work game design into what they're doing, to like support other aspects of like the curriculum. But for me, it's just straight, pure design thinking, design mindsets, and learning how to struggle and be okay with it.
I mean, definitely with game design, you have to be okay with failing and figuring out and fixing it. And moving on.
Right. No, you do. You absolutely do. And that's what's so hard sometimes is, when you have a project and, it just like you have to believe the answer is in you to keep going. But when you don't have that answer, you can't figure it out, or you're not happy with it. You're not satisfied with it. It's not quite right. It's not quite working. Then you could easily be like, well, what is in me then? I mean, I don't think it's an accident that a lot of people that I really love and respect in the industry talk a lot about their imposter syndrome, because, there are times where like you feel like the well is dry. And people are like, oh, you're a game designer. And inside you're like, not today. You're
like, am I though?
And that's the thing though. So. Right. And I would say for me, I don't have imposter syndrome because especially, and I think this is because of what I've been teaching my students for so long about show unfinished work, and that it's never good. It's never finished. You have to be satisfied with it. And that's okay. Like a lot of what I coach my students into thinking and trying to like kind of shape their design mindsets, like this is how you can approach it, really helps me too, which is sort of an unintended, but, obviously very, very pleasant byproduct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question would be, because I'm very intrigued by the fact that you teach game design. Mm-hmm. So how do I want to phrase this? So what are your kids' favorite, like, gaming mechanisms? Like, what kind of games do they like?
That's a good question. Kids are way more okay with take that kind of games than adults are, for sure.
Those are the kind of games I prefer, so I'm here for it.
Right? No, I mean, games that are like highly interactive. Yes. And also thematically, it has to be pretty appealing to them. So, for example, the game Carcassonne wasn't really popular. It didn't really like hit with kids. And I love Carcassonne. I think it's really interesting. I think it's fun. It's like my toilet game from app on my phone. So sorry, internet, but it's true. So like,
I love it.
Yeah. So like walled French cities that are on like the UNESCO World Heritage, like that, they don't care. But Star Wars Carcassonne is great. And it's a theme they like. It has a battle mechanic. It's really simple with dice, but it works well. And so for them, you know, Star Wars Carcassonne, they will play. Like that's when they'll get out on their own and play, as opposed to, you know, they learn it, they'll play it, okay, fine, and then it doesn't see it again. So, and I always have kids in my room at lunch, and so they don't have a whole lot of time. So definitely Love Letter and Coup, any games that you can play really, really quickly, in a short amount of time. Those are super popular. But then, you know, Deep Sea Adventure by Oink is super popular. Like one that kind of Cthulhu in the House, it's Simon. It was yellow, but now it's Simon. You know, I feel like in the game you don't have as much agency as you think you do, but they just love it. I mean, my copy is literally so worn. I didn't even realize, because kids have been playing it at lunch, I guess. But it is so worn that some of the characters are even hard to see, and I had to like quick order another copy for my classroom, because literally they have worn it out, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
So the game that Brian and I recently designed is Party of Animals, which is a fun take that game. So when we finally get those copies back in, I will send you one for your classroom, and
Absolutely.
they will enjoy it.
Yeah, totally. No, that's awesome.
Determined. Yeah. So, what is your favorite type of game?
Well, as far as type of games, like it's, you know, it's like anything else. It's like sometimes, you know, you feel like a beer. Sometimes you just feel like a Diet Coke. You know, it kind of depends on your mood, the people that you're with, all that other stuff. You know, yeah. I mean, I would say my favorite game from a design standpoint is Survive Escape from Atlantis. I love everything about it. Thematically, mechanically, it all makes sense. It's all intertwined. There's so many things that it's as much fun to play as it is to win. You can see how long the game goes with like the disappearance of the island. So I love that one from a design standpoint. Myself to play, I really like the Empire Builders series of games, the crayon rail system. And I remember when I first saw them, I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Then I played one, I'm like, oh, because the part of my brain that likes to make a plan and execute it with like minimal impact from other people. Yeah. So if you want a few hours of, you know, multiplayer solitaire, that's your jam right there. Let me tell you. No. And then just, yeah, it just depends on, you know, what it is. But I like feeling that I like control. I like to be able to feel like I have control in games. I don't need it to be perfect. I don't need it to be, you know, perfect knowledge. But I like it where I feel like I'm making decisions that, you know, I will live or die by. And I think that's fun. Like
that's pretty cool.
Probably.
Yeah. See, I'm like, I don't have enough of an attention span. So I like short games. Like if I can play a game in and out 15 minutes, I'm there for it. Like, sometimes we'll play like a deck builder, and that's as in depth as I can get. Like, I'm not there.
Yeah, well, and I think too, like that's okay. You know, as far as you know, whatever your temperament is. I mean, especially for me, I'm always, especially my classes are 45 minutes. So in this first week, all the games we're playing are games that kids can open the box, read through the rules, set up, play with near accuracy. They're always going to miss something, you know, near accuracy in that time period. And so like what's on the table this week is Cthulhu in the House, an out of print game called Powerpuff Girls Villains at Large. It's a really clever, fun little card game. And it's funny too.
Powerpuff Girls are awesome.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing, because sometimes like the boys will be like, I'm like, oh no, you didn't. Like, first of all, you don't know who this designer is because he's designed a ton of stuff and totally legit. And second of all, it's a really good game. And yeah, I mean, like, they're like, oh, you got the Rowdy Rough Boys. And I'm like, Walk the Plank from Mayday Games is 100% like, take that, push, shove. Oh no, I just threw myself in the ocean. Or, oh no, I have to throw myself in the ocean. That's super fun. Hey, That's My Fish.
I love that game.
Yep, it's so good. And one kid's like, that game is really actually pretty hard. I'm like, yeah, it's great. Yeah, just because it's
fun.
Yeah, whenever I have kids who are like super into chess, and I have them play, hey, that's my fish, and at first they're like, and then they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, there's more to it. So anything, I used to have them, start off with Deep Sea Adventure because they love it, but it is harder to learn and play in the amount of time that we have. So this year I actually took it out, and that's okay. We'll get to it later because I feel like I have to play it later. The only game that I play with them where definitely the length of the game exceeds what we have is Catan, because I feel like they have to know Catan. They have to have experience with Catan. And I did a program for gifted high school kids over the summer, 3-week residential program at a university. And it was interesting because out of all the games I brought, and I brought like 100 games, there were a couple of kids who were really into games. But really most of them knew nothing on that table except for Catan. It's almost become like a new Monopoly for people. So I feel like, and I love Catan. I have great friends who work for Catan. I've worked for Catan at their booth. So I'm not shilling product, but I genuinely, it can be swingy. It can be unfair, the luck, all that other stuff. You know what I mean? But it's a game that can lend itself to those moments of like intensity and emotion that you want to feel, or I want to feel in a game. And so it's pretty great.
There you go. Real quick. Hi, Mrs. Brown. Thanks for joining us. Now back to the game. Guilty announcement here. I have never played Settlers of Catan. Like, how can I be in the gaming industry and have never played Settlers of Catan?
You know what, though, is when I came into gaming, and I've been in gaming for, 14, 15 years, whatever, as a hobby, right?
Yeah.
And it's less than that, but it doesn't matter. When I came into gaming, most people, had been in gaming in the gaming groups that I joined much longer. And so I would hear about this. I'm like, oh, can we play it? Or someone would bring it. They'd be like, oh, Catan. We've moved on to other games. I'm like, okay. And then when I finally played it, I'm like, this is a lot of fun, And so I never actually got to play it too much. Because people always, and there's so many games out there nowadays, it's totally understandable, but they always wanted to play something else. But I mean, from a design standpoint, if I could come up with a system like that, that's like, can be, translated in so many different permutations, have the staying power, the audience that game has, the sales that game has.
Oh, I know, it's insane.
I know. Gosh. I would live in Catan Castle, adjacent to Carcassonne in France.
It'd be like the best day ever.
Drinking unlimited amounts of Weller's 12. My favorite bourbon. Send me some. Just kidding. No.
There you go, Facebook.
Yeah.
Now you know.
It's super expensive. Don't do that. That was a joke. That's a joke. But it is the best thing I've ever drank. Yeah. But anyway, going on.
When we were at PAX U, of course, there's always a big booth for Settlers Catan. But they had people walking around with these big, giant things on their head. And at that point, I actually became intrigued enough that now I want to play it.
Right. It's so cute.
Out, what are these giant, one of them was like a sheep. I was like, how do you have a sheep on your head?
Yeah. It's a really fun game. Yeah. It's a really fun game. Dragnarok. Yeah.
Oh, am I there?
You're back.
Okay, cool. So, what is that game about?
Well, I probably should talk about what it is now, but it is kind of has a funny story, because it was one day I was like, it would be really funny if you had a game about pigeons pooping on people, and that's the game I made, and that's the game I sold. And so, so we changed it from pigeons pooping on people to a fantasy scenario-based dexterity game. So there's, So I told us, I said, Childress, and he kind of rolled his eyes at me. I'm like, yeah, it's like Gloomhaven meets Flick 'em Up. And he's like, just kidding.
I'm here for all of that.
Yeah, so basically you've got like this sort of like mountainous landscape surrounding a village, and the dragons, whom all players are dragons, are basically fed up of all the people, trampling their rights, their autonomy, coming into their lairs to steal their gold. It's more or less from the dragon's perspective. And basically, because you're a dragon, you're not going to negotiate. So it's basically the goal is to burn them and their village down. So you have 4 different types of dexterity actions. You can flick fireballs, you can drop them, you can roll boulders down ramps, and then there's also a swooping action that you can do to like crash into each other and all that. And so the fun thing about having it scenario based is you can have scenarios. So there can be different types of goals, different types of setups. And so it's very sandboxy as far as that goes. And like in an ideal world, I would love to have one page of the rule book to be like sort of like a template, so that if people wanted to make their own rules or their own scenarios, especially if they were playing this with kids, that they could do that too. But we'll see. Paper is expensive. Plus there's enough stuff going into the game too. So yeah, I mean, it's just something that, I love, and it just was fun. I had a little bit of a hard time, with the whole like pooping on people is funny, burning them to death. And I'm like, well, if we just make them all kind of monsters, then it's fine to burn orcs, whatever.
Right.
So
like that's a little bit more acceptable.
Right. We don't have any orc groups,
Yeah.
I don't think
We could.
I'll find.
Give it time.
I'm just waiting. Yeah. So so that's Ragnarok. So hopefully this summer we'll start to get closer. I don't know when the goal for the Kickstarter is. So,
okay.
But we're going to be working on it, and I know they want to have that. They want to have significant momentum on it this year. So we'll see.
That's pretty cool. That answers the next question. I was going to say, are you going to be on Kickstarter?
Yes.
So
Colossal somewhat famously uses Kickstarter for their projects.
Yes. Yep. They are pretty cool publisher. So.
Yeah,
I have some pretty high hopes for you there. That'll be pretty dope.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun possibilities with it as far as like everything from like the gameplay to the components. Even like, there's fun things about like the art style. There's so many things. And it's funny because this is Ragnarok, so I guess they're going to be Norse dragons, I guess, to make the
cool,
or not, and just whatever dragons. And then the other game, not the one I was talking about that I heard from the publisher today, but another one that I was showing this year called Valkyrie. And that one I love. And so it's funny because like that's also Norse themed. And I guess like my grandfather came from Denmark, so there we go. I'm 100%.
That might be why you do that.
Right, I'm totally Viking. And then so it's funny because it's like I need another like Norse game to like finish the trilogy, I need to like come up with something, so who knows? Maybe with this one that we signed, maybe they'll just make it Norse themed, and then I'll just be like
and done.
Anybody else got a culture around here that can
I did it.
Stuff? Cool.
I love it. That's awesome. Will this be your first published game?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's like every project that I've had has taken a long time and in some cases not worked out the way that I thought they were going to work out. So, get it, regroup, that sort of thing. So I've been doing this a long time and it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I'd really like to actually see something with my name on it on the shelf. I feel like it's fun to talk about in theory that this is something I do. It'd be nice if other people could see this and experience it. But,
it'd be pretty cool. Like, how cool would it be to walk down like an aisle at Target and be like, "Oh my gosh, there's Kathleen's game."
Yeah,
that'd be
cool for Kathleen.
That'd be pretty. Sweet.
Kathleen would not be mad if my game was at Target. I'm going to Norway for the summer.
Be like, and goodbye.
Right.
I love it. Then, so you have another one that's being talked about?
Yeah, so I've got 2 other ones that are like in the hands of publishers right now for consideration. So that's cool. And I need to make another one, I guess. And that's the thing, because there's a lot of people out there who design a ton. Like Erica Buyaris is a really great friend, super prolific, and she's an elementary teacher with like 40 kids in her classroom. So when I say, you know, I'm a teacher, you only have so much mental bandwidth, really tired at the end, she has children of her own, an elementary teacher, and those are the real Vikings out there. Elementary teacher, 40 kids in her classroom, and she comes up with stuff like this. So I don't have an excuse. But the main thing for me, though, is, you know, I guess I do have limited bandwidth in terms of, you know, what I do and how I do it. And so it has to be something that, like, it has to be a passion project. Sometimes passion projects are not great if you don't want to let go of them or don't want to change them. So I try to, like,
so true.
You know, have some, like, emotional distance there. But yeah, I've got an idea that I've been kind of kicking around a little bit, and it keeps burbling up. So that's usually a good sign as far as
you need to, like, explore that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then all of a sudden I'm going to be reading manuals about maritime things from, like, the 1800s, but if I gotta do it.
That sounds awesome. Go for it.
Right. Thank
you.
Go
for it.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Google Docs. It's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of my friends that is watching, she is currently working on her very first game. Megan,
Yay.
I hope you're still watching. What type of advice can you give to Megan moving forward?
Get it on the table as fast as possible. It doesn't need to be complete. It can be an imperfect proof of concept. As ideas are more precious to you, it is harder to, like, let them go. Yes. So you just have to get it on the table, listen, ask open-ended questions, and make very clear, especially as a woman, that your feelings will not be hurt if they give you anything critical about the game, that if there's a problem in the game, you need to know about it, you want to know about it so you can fix it, that you're sure there's problems in the game, please help me find them. And, you know, the more receptive and invested that you can make your playtesters feel, the better feedback that you will get. And so the main thing is, you can design a game in your head, but that's the most frustrating time for me is when I have the game, but it's not on the table. And, like, you need time to work, you need time to process, but it's when those play tests happen is when you really see, like, growth and change and all that. So just get it on the table and don't let it become too precious. Kill your sacred cows.
Yep.
Yeah. What do players want the game to be is more important than what you want it to be. And don't.
That was such good advice. Oh my goodness.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, you can stick to your guns.
Like,
if you have a vision for something, you know, that's 100% great. Like, push to that. But, you know, I had one student one time who came to me with this game, and I was like, sweetheart, I don't think this game is doing what you want it to do. He's like, no, this is what I want. This is what I want. And he play tested it, and every single kid basically told him a variation on the same thing. And he's like, fine, I'll change it. And I'm like, cool, that's great. Like, I can handle you yelling at me, you know.
That'll be awesome.
But you have learned to listen to other people and incorporate that feedback into changes for your game. That, to me, is success. And that's really hard to do. You know, so it's like when I'm playtesting with a friend of mine, you know, and he'll, like, try to explain what's supposed to be happening. Nope, you don't come in the box. It doesn't matter. Your intentions don't matter. What is it? And then what can you make it to become? Yep.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's some solid advice. Awesome.
I've screwed up a lot.
No, it's not. Don't think of it as screw ups. Think of it as happy mistakes, because it got you to this point where Colossal is publishing your game.
Yeah, I mean, the most important changes I've ever made to games, I 100% will always attribute it to the changes that other people point out to me, the things that I was, you know, too in my own head to see. And that's where, yes.
There you go.
Yes.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, Kathleen.
You're welcome. This has been fun.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being the first episode in my series. Again,
Yay.
If anyone has a really cool name for this series of talking with ladies in the industry, please comment so we can name it. And yeah, we will catch you guys on.
I'm thinking now, like,
I know, right?
Lady corn just sounds weird, but, you know, there's something.
I mean, I am a unicorn, so it kind of blends it together, which is awesome. But it might be a little weird. So yeah, be sure to check out the next one. Make sure that you follow Kathleen and her game Ragnarok as it is being hit, or I was gonna say being released, but it's not being released. It's hitting Kickstarter in the summer. And
I want to give a couple little shout outs. One,
yes.
No, my
I
website.
love it. Do it.
My website, KathleenMercury.com, is 100% free. I take no ads. I charge nothing. I link everything on there. So you have a semester plus of everything that I have for teaching game design for you to use, download, make your own copies, change it, do it better than me with my compliments.
I'm looking at it right now. This is an awesome website.
Yeah. It's like, because the picture there on the front is me when I was in Rivendell in New Zealand, and I'm still mad I didn't take my shoes off and be full Hobbit. I'm still mad about that, but that's okay.
But it's a pretty dope picture, so
yeah.
Cool either way.
I was in Rivendell. I did have a sword. I did have a cloak. The other thing is to check out. So I do. I'm often on Board Game Broads, which is another podcast that I'm part of for women in the industry. So the more we do,
which is how I found you.
The more we do to promote ourselves, and the better off we all are, and all gamers. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. Games in schools and libraries. I'm often on board games as well, and that's super fun. So. Yeah, I can be found on Twitter at mercury.com with 7 M's. I'm on BGG as Funk Donut, one word. And so I'm always happy to talk with people about games, and anything that I can do to help people teach games in the classroom, I'm all about it.
This is like what's awesome about the gaming community, that it's so much about like helpful collective, it's so cool. You can walk up to anybody that's in the games and be like, hey, you want to play this and help me? And they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I give everything away for free because of how incredibly generous and kind everyone has been to me. Mm-hmm. And the more people in gaming, the more kids playing better games, there's just, I could go on and on. So it's pretty great.
I love it. Cool.
Thanks.
Well, follow Kathleen because she's awesome, obviously.